Good morning. I hope this video finds you guys well and ready to get started. This is a little bit of a lengthy video because I am condensing what we talked about in class, and then I will be going over your textbook. So the first part is definitely going to coincide with the notes that hopefully you took in class. And then I will switch, and then I'll kind of go through the textbook and identify things that you will need to know for your quiz this week. One thing that I really want to impress upon you is that this material, please do not allow this to be a memorization, regurgitation, and then you forget it right after the quiz. The information that we're going through really is foundation of communication, and these are concepts that you really need to take into account every time that you are creating something that you are going to communicate. Especially if you are trying to either persuade people or to inform people. It really is important in order to have all of those things. One of the concepts that we talked about in class are my 2 R's and my 2 C's, and this really encompasses a lot of the material that are in these chapters and will be reinforced throughout the semester. So you can see the importance of these concepts as we continue to move along. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump right on in. The first R is responsible. You have to have responsible communication using credible sources. And that means that you're not receiving your information just because you hear someone talk about it. Yes, I am speaking to you now, but I can back it up with your textbook, and these are credible sources, but also by personal experience because I've been doing this for a while. And I know and I have seen first person how effective these concepts are. If you really think about those people that you've heard speak in the past, those that really resonate with you, you're going to recognize a lot of these concepts. Reporting accurately, stay true to the context of what the author is trying to convey. And in this particular instance, you are being responsible to whomever you are receiving that information from that has done some background work, more intensive work, and you're utilizing their research in order to state your point. You're using it as evidence for what you are talking about, or what, again, what you're trying to persuade or inform people about. It is so important that we have responsible communication. I feel like in this time period that rhetoric, which is communication, verbal or written, really has taken on all these different meanings, and you'll hear this word used a lot. The rhetoric that they are portraying is inconsistent with their actions, and that is very important to recognize, especially when we're going into election seasons where people are saying, hey, I'm going to, or candidates are, what they're going to do for you. But if you kind of peel that back and step away from how they're saying it, how dynamic they are, if their actions do not correlate with what they're saying, then there's some discrepancy there and some cause for concern. And really, how accurate is your information? So you need to be really careful of that, especially the importance of not using hearsay of just someone who is a great orator. Hitler was a great orator. Doesn't mean that, he wasn't crazy as a day is long. And he had a mastermind in Joseph Goebbels that was his right-hand man, and he was the master of what we really have coined logical fallacies. And one of those things is that you say something enough that people will believe it. I can look at here, I can, talk to you, and I can get you to believe pretty much anything I want you to if I become convincing enough. And if I keep saying it over and over again, you're going to end up questioning it and wondering if that was accurate, or are you right, and maybe you heard it incorrectly, and then you just go down this other spiral. It is so important that if there's a red flag, you need to kind of table it, look into it, hearing what people have to say. There's nothing wrong with that, doesn't mean that you are in agreement with it. But in order for us to continue the conversation, which is academic writing at its core, continuing the conversation, entering into discourse that is well grounded, listening to different ideas, morphing that, different projects that we will be doing throughout the semester are going to put you in these positions to exercise that and see the importance of getting different perspectives, and how by obtaining different perspectives, and you don't have to be in complete agreement with what someone is saying, but you can extract certain things that you're like, I can get on board with that. One of the things that we talked about is extremely important that when whatever your message is, that not only are you having it founded in truth and facts and things that are that you can actually research for truth, but also that you're taking in your personal beliefs and your personal ideology, and that can take on some different forms. But again, just because we're different doesn't mean that everyone's wrong. It's just that we have to learn how to come to the table and have communication, healthy communication, in order to continue to move forward. The next R that we have, so we have responsible communication, and that's some heavy. That's part of your ethos, by the way, which we're getting ready to go into in a little bit. Being responsible, because that also attacks or hits on your credibility, it's your ethics, how people will view you as an academic and as a professional. Being respectful. We've already determined this in class. The moment that I insult you, the moment that is the same moment that you shut down and you will not have any time to hear anything that I have to say. You've already formed the opinion, because I've insulted you, that you want nothing to do with my message. And that's feasible, isn't it? The moment that somebody insults you, why should you listen to them? That's not healthy communication at all. And now the thing about being respectful is not just verbally and the more in your face, the ad hominem of calling someone a name, but it can be inadvertent, where you are shaming someone, making assumptions. Well, obviously, if you don't think this, or everyone should know that, bandwagon appeal. We're going to get into logical fallacies next week, so we're going to really unpack that. But we do things inadvertently because we've been around that. We know that persuasion, everyone that is listening to this video has tried to persuade someone, mainly a parent, depending upon how old you are, to get your way. And you're going to pull out all the stops, and everyone is doing this. Everyone is going. Everyone in the class got an F. So, it's understandable why I did. Now, I'm a parent, and yes, I have heard that one. Does it make it right? Absolutely not. Because at the end of the day, you are responsible for the words that leave your mouth. You have absolutely no control over what other people say, but you have complete autonomy over how you respond, if you are in agreement with it or not. And so that, I think we have to really marinate on. You have responsibility as a human to control what comes out of your mouth and what you say, and how your words can uplift or they can tear down, they can be divisive, or they can pull people together. And my hope is that we really focus on the positives of building people up and pulling them together. And what are some effective ways in which to do that? Never use derogatory marks or profanity. One, it's off-putting. Secondly, as far as profanity is concerned, it really adds absolutely nothing to a conversation. There's no substance to those words. They're filler words. And it is quite off-putting. Derogatory comments are basically comments where you're insulting someone. It could be, that's where you get your ists, you're sexist, you're racist, you're, whatever those are. Nationalities, the way someone looks, it could be socioeconomic. Derogatory marks, some people, they cloak them in jokes. Well, it's not funny. It never is funny. It just never is. And even though that person may respond to you as though it doesn't faze them, I promise you it does. Again, I feel like anyone who's ever been to elementary school has been on the receiving end of some type of remark. And you probably remember that moment like it was yesterday, regardless of how old you are. I'm 54 and I still remember things from elementary school, things that hurt my feelings, but because I didn't want to seem out of the group or whatever that looks like, that I put on the brave face and acted like it didn't bother me, but it does. And your words sting, they have power. There is power in the spoken word, there is power in the written word. If you've studied any type of literature, especially historical lit, speeches, whatever, there is power in that. And there are reasons why people still quote those speeches today, because of the power that each of those speeches have. The next concept is clear communication. Clear communication is exactly what that is. That it doesn't confuse people. Grammar, punctuation. Now, I have also placed in your modules a grammar video, one that talks about contractions and possessiveness, basic grammar, parts of speech. We talked about punctuation. Punctuation is so the reader is reading your thoughts and ideas in the manner in which you've intended. And by not using punctuation correctly, you can literally change the complete meaning of a sentence. Just like our example that I talked about in classroom, let's eat, comma, grandma, to let's eat, grandma. Well, one was an invitation for grandma to go out to lunch with you, and you can spoil her and shower her with love and all that good stuff. And the other one is you put her on the serving platter, and cannibalism is now on the menu. And as you can see, the intent and the meaning of both of those phrases, they have the exact same words. They have an exclamation point. There's excitement there. But what was the excitement? The invitation or the fact that you're now a cannibal and you're going to eat your grandma? So I know that that's a very extreme example. However, how often have we gotten caught up in miscommunication? Texts. I think I may have asked that in class, of how many of you have either been insulted or have inadvertently insulted someone based on a text, because punctuation matters. And, you know, just like that, if don't type in all caps because it means you're yelling. Same thing with the exclamation point. For whatever reason, you know, I'm an English teacher, so I have to have an end mark. And so I put periods after my statements. And I hear from my daughters, why are you doing that? It sounds so, you know, serious, because it's an end mark. You know, people read into that. But the thing is make sure that you use correct punctuation. I'm going to circle back around to the editing, because there's 3 editing tools that that you do need to know, and that I strongly encourage you to practice as you are still strengthening and your skills in writing and communication. And it really is to help empower you and feel confident in the work that you're producing, that it reflects you in a manner in which you want to be reflected. Used clear with your grammar and punctuation. If it is used incorrectly, it will change your message or confuse the reader. And remember, if you've confused your reader, they have no idea what you're trying to communicate, based on poor grammar, poor punctuation, you failed. If they leave with a totally opposite message from what you were saying, that's on you, not on them. So it's very important to really think about what you're going to say and communicate it in a way that they're going to receive it. Another one of those is completing your thoughts. When we're writing in a rough draft format, we're trying to get our thoughts down as fast as we can before we lose them. And sometimes what happens is we forget to complete our thought because we know in our head what we're trying to say. But when a reader is coming in cold, they don't have that. They can only take face value what you put in front of them. So it's very important that you do that. Vocabulary is another one that's extremely important. Knowing what words mean. How should they be used? Parts of speech matter. If you have a noun, don't use it as a verb or an adjective. Pay attention to that. Using words that you do not really know what they mean. That's a problem. because if you're using a word incorrectly, there's someone probably in that group that does know how it is used, and that's going to make you seem less intelligent. And so be very careful with the words that you're using. Pay attention to your audience. That's extremely important. Now I'm going to speak differently in front of an elementary class than I will a college class, and also between a college class and my peers. There's different vocabulary that I'm going to use. There's different concepts that I'm going to use, and I'm going to make them relevant, or it may be that I need to explain it a little bit more. If I'm teaching a college class on education to future educators, well, they haven't gotten to the part where they're using all those words and those concepts because there's a lot. So I'm going to fill it in. I'm going to define terms because I need to get them to where they're going. Every profession has their own terminology, their own vocabulary, the things that are relevant to that profession. And you have to start ground floor. But until you're there, you want to push yourself to where you're learning more, but don't get so into it that you're really talking about something that you really do not have any idea. Also, as a student who's never, if you're an education major, if you're a student and you want to be a teacher, it's very difficult for you to talk about classroom management if you've never darkened the doorway of a classroom as an educator to really speak into that. So to use those concepts in a manner where I am authoritative in this, it doesn't wash as well as someone who's walked it, been it, and can speak into it because of personal experience. So be very careful with who your audience is and respecting who they are. It could be a matter of, if you're in business, if you are trying to gain business from a company that's owned by people who are Jewish, you wouldn't invite them to a pork roast on a Friday because it doesn't mesh. So be clear about what you're doing, being respectful to your audience, know who your audience is, speak into that, use terminology that's going to reflect what they're doing. If depending upon what business that they're going into, if it's a retail store, then that's where your verbiage and your focus need to be. You were not going to talk about agriculture unless it deals with it, right? So you want clear communication. You don't really want to fog it up with something that really doesn't make sense. Know who your audience is. That's a part of the clear communication, and speaking to that audience without insulting them, going back to the other part, and making sure that you're using terminology that they're familiar with. If you're using a word every now and again, that's a learning moment and that's okay. But when your whole talk is just filled with concepts that they really have never heard of, then there's not going to be an engagement. You've lost them and then you failed. Be concise. Now, this really goes down to with academic writing and the message that you're trying to portray. One thing that I always say is put yourself in the audience seat. How would you need something to be explained to you? If you're jumping all around the place, it's going to be confusing, just like my Walmart story. If I'm at the checkout at Walmart and I'm so excited about my purchases and I'm grabbing my keys and I'm thinking about my trip to Walmart and I'm driving down the road and oh man, I forgot my glasses at home. And as I was walking down the aisle of the Walmart, one of the aisles, I saw this really pretty dish. But then when I got home, I was walking up my walk and I forgot one of the most important things I was shopping for. Now, did that even make sense? I was all over the place. And you were probably going, what in the world is she talking about? Well, guess what? If that's what you said, then you're exactly right. I failed because you didn't get my story. You didn't get what I was trying to convey to you. And because I didn't take the time to put it in a logical manner of, making a list, getting my car keys, going to my car, driving to the store, walking up and down the aisles, looking for whatever it was I was going to purchase, but getting sidetracked by a pretty dish. I go to the checkout and I'm really excited about my purchase. By the time I got home and I was walking up the walk, I just realized that the very reason that I went to the store, I didn't get because I got sidetracked. Now that's a little bit different, isn't it? I have a chronological order of events. Do not underestimate chronological order. Everything has to have order. We're logical creatures. We have to be spoken to in that manner. If you're jumping all over the place, it's one of the things we call abrupt shifts, and it really does disturb the flow of the reading. It takes the attention off of really what was important, takes the reader some time to regroup and get back in there, if they do at all. The moment that you confuse them, then they're gone. One example in that is also, there's articles that you see on social media, when you're looking at news articles, and the title will get you, and you're like, oh, I totally want to read that article. Well, when you get into the article, it's all this stuff that had nothing to do with what the title said. And then they finally get to it in the last quarter of the article. Well, if you get there, because if it starts jumping around and talking about things that really have nothing to do with what you said you were going to talk about, you lost me. One of the things I do like to do is I always like to read the comments on those, because people get really fed up and they love to share that little bit of, thanks for wasting 15 minutes of my life for absolutely nothing, and that's really, honestly, that is what happened. You wasted someone's time. In order to be concise, we need to use an outline. An outline is the map of your writing project. And so you need to make sure that you follow that map. What it does, it is to get it in front of you. It gives you the organization of what you're going to write. And yes, it does include those short things. Now, remember, as a side note, you never write in paragraph form or complete sentences in an outline. You give the main ideas so you can expound on those ideas while you're writing the rough draft. It helps you to look at it in a small form, so you can move things around to make sure that when you have your topic sentence or your claim, that the evidence underneath of it really does support it, that everything belongs there. And if not, take out that piece of evidence and put it where it belongs. The other piece about the outline is it will ensure that you've included everything that you need. Read your instructions for your assignment and make sure that your outline reflects everything that's being asked of you in that assignment. That's very important. That's concise communication. That's one thing I like about academic writing. You get in, you've already told the reader what it is that you're writing about through your thesis statement, which is the purpose of your paper, and you get right to it, and then you have your outcomes. And there you have it. It's very easy. Get to the point, get in, get out. This is not creative writing where you have to really create these worlds and you're leading people on, down this journey where you really can't give them the end of the story because you want them to read the whole story. Academic writing is not that. It's about research. It's about sharing ideas. It's about a beginning and an end. And in that thesis statement, you are telling the reader what it is that they're getting ready to read about. One of the concepts that we talked about in class was the rhetorical triangle and how important that was, or it is. And we talked about the structure of a triangle and how sound that structure is. And if by chance I take one of these sides out, what does it do to the soundness of my structure? It will collapse. So with using the rhetorical triangle as that basis of communication, which is very important, I am ensuring that I have balanced communication. Balanced communication. So the first concept that we're talking about is ethos. Ethos is your credibility, which really rolls into your ethics. Remember that your name, you have to protect it. And that when you get into your professions, it's not as big of a world as you think it is. And your name will precede you, good or bad. Protect it. Protect your credibility. Making sure that when you are doing research and that when you are, if you're going into medicine, if you're diagnosing someone, that you have actually done your due diligence and you've done your background work and you know that whatever information you're providing, that is the best information that you can give your patients. How often do we hear about some doctors and they've got, oh, well, I went here and this person just totally blew me off. Okay, well, guess what? Nobody's going to want to see that person. There's an old adage that says that negative comments spread 10 times faster than positive, and it's true. Protect your name, protect your credibility, protect your ethics. Make sure that if you're going to communicate something, that one, that it's accurate information and not hearsay. Here I go. You're going to hear some of these concepts because all these things really overlap. It's not hearsay that someone who just looks great and sounds great, you heard it on a podcast, that you've actually done your diligence. I always like to use politics because it's just the easiest one to do. But, if you have a candidate that's saying that they're going to do, they're going to support this and support that, but then you look at their voting record and you see they either voted against it or, my favorite, they were present, which to me is worse. You were there and you stayed out of it. You didn't even put a voice one way or another. And these are people that we're electing into office. And so you do need to pay attention to that. How often has someone voted present? Well, to me, they need to get fired because they're not doing their job. As a candidate, as an elected public servant, their job is to speak on your behalf. And if they aren't speaking on your behalf, then they're not doing the job to which you hired them. You know what I'm saying? The next thing we have is pathos, passion and emotion. And you're probably wondering, it's like, why in the world is that even important? I can have all the facts and figures, and if I communicate it in a manner that is dull, disconnected, like I'm just reading it out of a book or off of a piece of paper, are you going to actually stay engaged? No, you're not. Think about, again, the people that you have heard speak, and then you're like engaged with what they're saying. You want to pay attention. You want to hear what they say. It's because of how they're saying it. There's inflection. You can see there's a passion with what they're doing. They believe. Actually, sometimes, people who speak and they say, you need to do this. Well, you don't look very excited about what you're talking about. So why should I believe you? You say this is the greatest thing since sliced bread, but yet you talk and, like you've come from a funeral. Passion and emotion have a lot to do with it. Is that person excited, or are they engaged with what they're doing? Are they selling out to the same ideas that they want you to sell out to? And that's important. Logos. Logos are logistics. To me, that's your research. And again, we've talked about this in class. Your research will make or break your projects. That's your grunt work right there, is your research. And you'll notice that logos really feeds into the ethos and the pathos. Because if you're not excited about what you're doing, engage with what you're doing because you had poor logos, you have nothing to back it up. Logic. Is it logical? Is the information that you're utilizing, is it logical? Because again, I'm going to go back to the fact that we're logical creatures. Does it make sense? And if not, you need to question it. Questioning is a huge part of academic writing, and it's okay to ask questions. And it's okay to answer questions. What's not okay is when someone asks a question and you shut them down and just kind of blow the question off because you don't want to answer it, or maybe because you don't know the answer. And we've all met those people. They don't have the answer, so they'll redirect or change the topic because they don't know what to say about it. That's also a red flag. We've talked about engagement of material. And we talked about some concepts of active reading, annotation. All these are so very important. Active reading and annotation really go hand in hand. When you're annotating, you're reading with purpose and you're marking it up. So when I'm going to annotate something, if I'm active reading, it means that I am purposely reading this because I am purposely trying to gain information, locate information, get a deeper understanding of something. Annotation is where I take it a step further. I'm going to print off that article, or if it's in my textbook, because I'm a person who annotates my books, I have a pen in my hand or a highlighter. Typically, I'll have one or the other or both. I am going to underline concepts that stand out to me. If it's a textbook, I'll have a highlighter. I will highlight the bolded words, hint, hint, hint. And then I will usually take that highlighter and underline the meaning of that word, because typically it's within the context of that, what that word is being mean, or where it's been used. If I'm reading an article, like you guys were choosing an article to write a critique for this week, annotating looks a little different. One, you're annotating to identify any words or phrases that you do not understand. You're marking on the paper. Use a contrasting color. Do not, and I mean, you can with black pencil, black ink pencil, or blue ink, but they're easier to overlook because the ink on the page is black. So I always try to get a contrasting color that's going to pop out, that I can read. So I'm not going to use typically an orange or a yellow, or depending on how dark the orange is, because they're usually a lighter color and it's harder to read. But I'll get like the fuchsia, the hot pink, aqua, teal, purple, well, purple. I'll get those pens because I can, those edits actually stand out with those colors. And when I print that article off, I have my writing utensil in my hand. As I'm reading it, I'm underlining. And it's even with my first read through. So I'm gonna identify words that I don't know. I'm gonna underline it. I'm going to underline phrases or references. So like if they reference a person or a time in history or something like that, and you are not 100% sure of what that is, you need to make sure that you know what that reference is. Jot it off in the margins. Don't write a dissertation. If it's a word you don't know, I get a couple, I love synonyms. I just love synonyms. Helps grow your vocabulary, but sometimes the synonym defines the word better than the definition. So a brief definition so I know what the word means. For the phrases or references, I'm going to jot off to the side just something so it can spark. I'm going to look it up real quick. Look it up. Google it. It really takes like 15 seconds of your life to go do that. Do not just skip over it and not go back, because you're going to miss the magnitude of what they're trying to say. And you don't want to do that, because again, you're reading to gain deeper understanding, but if you don't look up those things, then you're going to be confused. Many of you have told me that comprehension is an issue for you. So take the time. It may be at first you're having to underline a lot. You're having to look up a lot, but as you're continuing on your major and you're moving forward, it'll become less and less, because your vocabulary is going to grow and you're going to become more confident. Do not underestimate context clues within the writing, because a lot of times it does identify. Also, when you're looking at words, make sure that contextually that you're looking up the right definition. My example on that is the word repair. Now, if I say repair, I'm pretty sure about 100% of you guys would say it's to fix something that's been broken. But if I'm teaching a historical lit, something that could be 19th century, even early 20th century, if I said I repaired to the other room, it means I went to the other room. And you will see that. You will read that in historical lit. Repair is not always has been meant to fix something. There are other meanings. And so if you were reading something where their intent, the one that comes off my mind is Count of the Baskervilles, I taught that novel. And it was talking about them repairing to the other room. And I would always get tickled with, I usually would teach us about 8th and 9th grade. And when they have to do their definitions, I'd always make them get the context clue and then go to the dictionary to look it up, especially with historical lit. And it never failed. People would not go to the book and they wouldn't look it up. And so when I would get to that word, I would call on someone and say, okay, what'd you get for repair? To fix something. Well, obviously you didn't do your homework, because if I read that sentence and I used that definition, of course you're confused, because that's not what it meant. And now you have no idea. So make sure that you're looking at those terms. And like I said, your vocabulary will grow and you won't always have to do it. Now, I would think that you're going to have to do it to some extent with each article. Hopefully, as you're continuing to move towards your profession, your articles are going to get more focused on that content area, and more words are going to be introduced to you. And so you are growing your vocabulary within your profession. So there should be some defining there in this. The other part is to identify, what's the purpose of the article? What are the main points that the author is trying to make? Did anything that you read evoke a question? If so, write it off to the side. Now, again, I say that when I start annotating, even with my first read through, and what I will find is there's times where I've written that question off to the side and then they end up answering it. And that's great because you got that answer. But what if they didn't? Now, that's also something on that article that they've left a hole, which could be mentioned in your response or your critique. What was the evidence support each one of their claims? A claim is another word for like your topic sentence. Okay, it means that this paragraph is going to deal with whatever you just said it was, and the evidence is the support, the evidence from their research to support that claim. Everything in that paragraph must reflect back to the claim. If there's any sentence that is in that paragraph that does not have to deal directly with that claim, that promotes an abrupt shift. It should not be there. That's why we use our outlines to make sure we remove those things and put them where they need to be. It's not that it's a bad piece of information, but if you put a good piece of information in a place it shouldn't belong, it's going to promote confusion. You've lost the impact that you were looking for. Notating. Notate everything. If you have questions, if something's important, that's very important when you are annotating, you're actively reading. Mark it up. What do you have to say about it? Okay. All right. So that really concludes the notes that we did. So I'm going to jump into our textbook. Now I know that you guys, we're using two different editions. I am looking out of the 4th edition, but I have the 5th edition sitting here with me. And so I will reference the chapters that we will be doing. Now, the chapters you were supposed to be covering in week 1 and week 2 were 55 through 58. This is 4th edition, by the way. 55 through 58, and then 25 through 28, and 32 through 35. Now, the grammar, part 8, is really your reference stuff. It's your handbook. It has MLA, APA information in it, grammar. I have also included in your modules this week a grammar video and one on contractions and possessive nouns. I want you to look at that. For those of you that you still have some challenges, the reason I brought this to your attention is so you have a resource to go to. It even talks about homonyms. Which word do you use? Which is the better choice? There, and there. When in doubt, go there. That's not your only resource, though. Get online. You guys are tech savvy, way more so than me. But I will go to Google and I will say, how would you use a comma effectively? A colon, a semicolon. Many of you guys have already said that these are some challenge areas for you. What is a better way to say da 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 da? And it will come up with some other options and some words or phrases. So use the resources that are available for you. And the other really cool thing, especially when you're using the internet, it's fast. I mean, you're really talking about 10 seconds. I mean, the biggest part is you actually typing it in. And then it comes up and then you have it right there at your fingertips. If you have to look up the same thing more than once until you really get it, write it down. There's a lot to be said. There's a reason that I have you guys write your notes on pad and pen in my class, because there's something with the act of writing that helps you retain it better. And you have to learn how to take notes. When you get out of college and into your professions, a lot of times you have a pad and a pen. And like I told you guys before, I will always take a pad and a pen to every single meeting, even if the only thing that I've written on that pad is my name and the date. And nothing else comes out of it. But I will always have that. Going on a job interview, take something to write with just in case you have questions, or while you're talking, you don't want to forget to ask a certain question. So writing, there's something about remembering. It actually helps you to retain that information a lot more because of the act of writing it. So if you're looking up something more than once and you're having a hard time with it, write it down, write what it's saying. Okay, don't just print it off, because really, are you going to look at it? Not, probably not. But again, I would write that out. So those are your grammar chapters are 55 through 58. And just kind of really look at it. Sentence issues, it talks about comma splices. We talked about complete sentences and fragments. Where those things really occur is that when we're writing, if we don't go back and edit, we're trying to get our ideas down so fast that we omit things. And then we forget to go back and complete the phrase. Remember that you're in the driver's seat. And whatever that reader is receiving, it is your responsibility to complete those ideas. It is dangerous for you to allow someone to fill in your gaps, period. Speak for yourself. Speak on your own behalf. You need to be proactive and be a self-advocate. And if this is your work, you want to represent your work. You don't want somebody saying, well, this is what they got out of it. And then you're like, no, that's not. But if you didn't communicate that correctly, then whose fault was that? I hate to say it, but it would be yours. Verb tenses. Subject verb agreement. Guys, you have got to really read this. If you start in past tense, that old paper has to be in past tense. Excuse me, I got a problem with it. If you start in present, the whole thing has to be in present. I am not kidding you. I've had students that will use two different tenses in the same sentence. But this is what I would have to say. Did you read it out loud? Because if you did, it wouldn't even sound correctly. Remember that every one of you have either spoken this language or heard it since the day you were born. Even if you make choices to use slang and that everyday vernacular that a lot of young people use, I mean, sorry, that's your choice, but you know what the English language should sound like. You know, and you may even mock people. They sound hoity-toity because of it, but you know what perfectly spoken English sounds like. And when you're writing, you have to utilize that. That is a part of your credibility, by the way. And you know, it makes you sound intelligent. There's no one that I've ever taught that when if I ask the question, how do you want to be represented, or how do you want people to view you as an academic or a professional? No one said, I want to seem ignorant and like I don't know what I'm talking about. No one. They want to seem knowledgeable. They want to be professional. They want to have credibility. They want people to listen to what they have to say. In order to do that, you have to write well. And depending upon what level you are in writing, some of you, it's going to take a little bit more fine tuning. Writing how you speak is not the way to go. If I was rough drafting it, probably, but you better go back and you better wordsmith it. You better edit and revise. Okay. Verb tense, subject, verb agreement, pronoun, antecedent agreement. Very important. And when I say pronoun, antecedent agreement, it is not this new age stuff with the whole pronoun nonsense. This is dealing with if I said Jack came into the room and took his desk and moved it, his refers back to Jack. That's what a pronoun is used to do. It is so you're not saying Jack came in the room and Jack got his desk and Jack moves it to the wall. One, because that's redundant. And now I don't even know what Jack did. All I heard was Jack, Jack, Jack. Pronouns help break that up. And so you know who they're talking about. But it's replacing that that main noun so it flows a lot easier. That's what pronoun antecedent is. Please make sure that you are utilizing the singular pronouns for singular subjects and plural for plural subjects. If you are one person, you are not a they and you are not a them. I'm just going to leave that there. Pronoun case, pronoun references, mechanics, capitalization, knowing when to capitalize them or not. You should not have some random word capitalized in the middle of a sentence. With that being said, though, please make sure that every time you're using a source Please make sure that you're capitalizing the titles of these articles and books correctly. In APA, it is a little bit different on how you are to capitalize in a bibliography. But for MLA, you're using correct capitalization. And so make sure that you are doing that. Spelling names, making sure they're capitalized. If you're using the personal pronoun I, which you are able to use in your discussion boards, you capitalize it. Now, I've been pretty lenient on the discussion boards thus far. However, as we're getting our feet wet and I'm making you mindful of things, I will start taking off points if the grammar is, if you're not using punctuation, if you're not capitalizing correctly, you're not shifting paragraphs when you change a focus, you make another paragraph. Each one of your discussion boards, I give you, 3 or 4 different questions. Well, each one of those is a different focus. There should be 3 or 4, how many different prompts I'm giving you. Each one of those is a paragraph. Yep. I know you're like going, oh my gosh, yes. So remember that your discussion boards are an opportunity in which to practice, and that's weekly practice. Use it for the tool in which it was intended to be used. All right, so now I'm going to, now for those, part 8, which is the troubleshooting, where in the 4th edition, it starts with chapter 53, and the 5th edition, it actually starts with chapter 51. But in your table of contents, it has it broken out as part 8 as the handbook, and that's really where a lot of that stuff from week 1 is. I strongly encourage you to peruse through that. There will be some questions on grammar on this quiz this week, tense agreement, things like that. All right, week 2, chapter 25, 26, 28, and 32. These are like under writing routines, which is part 4 and part 5 style. In the 4th edition, it's chapter 25. In the 5th edition, it's chapter 20, which is smart reading. And that we've already talked a lot about this. Smart reading is engaging with what you are reading. You are reading with purpose. We've talked about this. Active reading. There's some concepts that I want you to know. And I want you to look at it. What really constitutes smart reading? Recalling the basics. Look at the table of contents. Highlight and annotate important things. Read to deepen what you already know. That's why you're doing research. That's what I was saying. Leave yourself open to learn something new. That's important. Okay. Read above your level of knowledge. Now, use logic with that. Not, you're like still like on step 1. Don't go to step 10 like you're already a professional, because depending, especially like if you're a sciences and those words get and those concepts get more and more entailed, I wouldn't do that. Remember, it's what we call a scaffold. Think about what a building, when you're working on high, you have the base, and then you have your next tier, and then you have your next tier, and you have your next tier until you get where you're going. That's kind of what you're doing. You're scaffolding your skills. And so you want to make sure that you want to push it, and it's okay. And you should be looking up some words, but you shouldn't be so far over your head where, it takes you an hour to get through a paragraph because you had to look up every word. But you do want to read above your level. You want to push your reading to more demanding levels. You can't blow right through it. Don't do that. Challenge yourself. All right, so we have recall the basics, read to deepen what you already know, read above your level of knowledge. The 4th one, read what makes you uncomfortable. This is interesting. Especially with the dynamic of today. Or not even with today. Sometimes we don't like uncomfortable topics, and we don't want to talk about it. But I would have to challenge you. How are you going to make a difference?
if you don't start reading what's uncomfortable. Could be a viewpoint that you're not in agreement with. If you are a Republican and you watch Fox News and you turn to CNN to try to get a balance, and then they're totally you don't like it, you get angry, what do? You turn the channel. Vice versa. You watch CNN, you have this viewpoint, you go to Fox to see what's going on over there, and you get all irritated because it's not in alignment with what you've been hearing. You get mad, you turn them off. We gotta learn how to listen to one another. It could be a topic. Human trafficking. People don't like to talk about that because it can be very sensitive. It deals with children, people stealing. It's modern day slavery. That's an uncomfortable, a very uncomfortable topic. It may be a topic that we have to look at where it affects us personally, especially as a parent. What am I letting my kids look on the internet? Do I have fun? Do I check up on them? Do I make sure that they're safe? Have I educated my child to know how to navigate safely when they're going out in public? And it becomes more important now. Are you paying attention when you're walking from a building to the car? Because being made aware of your surroundings so someone doesn't steal you. And those are uncomfortable conversations. People blow them off or they laugh them off. But we have to look at that because it does hit home. It does. And sometimes, whatever that could be, whatever that uncomfortable conversation is, and you have a viewpoint on it, and that's great. But don't do yourself a service to see what the other side of that argument is. In order to learn, to move forward, could be to fix. The next one, read against the grain, which kind of like falls into that. Question the assumptions that the writers make. That's fine. The logic that they use. We should be able to ask questions and an academic to gain insight. If someone is questioning you, that means they want to continue the conversation. They want to know what you know. They're not attacking you. And I feel like sometimes people have changed that asking questions. They get threatened by someone asking them questions. And so they shut them down or they insult them or they just tune them out. But you should be grateful if somebody asks you a question because it gives you an opportunity to speak into what you know and give them a different perspective. And unfortunately, I think we've all been in those situations where you've asked a question and someone gets threatened and they shut you down and ignore you. That says a lot about them, not about you. Put that in perspective. I even had that with a doctor with my husband. He's had some health issues, and it was the lady who's doing his blood work. And I'm asking questions because I would like to see, is there something natural we can do? She totally did not like my questions, literally turned her body away from me, scooched up to where she was just looking at him. I do not have a lot of confidence in her because she didn't even want to consider what I had to say. Even if I'm wrong, then walk me through it. Don't just not acknowledge me. How would you have responded to that? I have lots of thoughts and words that I would like to share about that, but this is not the moment. All right. Read slowly. I think in elementary school we used to roll through it because we didn't want to seem like the slowest reader in class, but unfortunately we trained ourselves to try to read fast, so we didn't look bad because we read slow. But we trained ourselves not to pay attention to what we were reading because we were so focused on reading the words that we didn't think about what they meant and how they were. And again, comprehension, that's a part of engagement. Annotate what you read. We just talked about that. Anything that you are doing assignments on, annotation is a study skill, by the way. So be very, I would get in the habits of that. Do your textbooks. I mean, if you look at my textbooks, I have notes. I've got sticky notes. I've got stuff everywhere because I want to be able to get to it quickly and get my eyes to where I want to read or, the information that was important that stuck out. Chapter 26 in 4th edition, chapter 21 in 5th edition is critical thinking. You've heard me use these words, claims and evidence, quite a bit now. Claims are just that, passages in a text where you make an assertion. an argument. That's another word for your topic sentence. Evidence is the support. And that's where you are extracting the key, in your research that supports that topic sentence or that claim that you made. You must have claims and evidence. If I just make a claim, but I have nothing to back it up, then I have no argument. I have no ethos. I have no credibility because I did not take the time to fill that out. And I have made edits on past students' papers. It's like, I see your claim, but I see no evidence. Or if you have evidence, but there's no direction, or I have all this stuff here, but what's its purpose? They are the yin and yang. You must have both claims and evidence. I've repeated myself twice, 2 or 3 times. Please make sure that you know that. Think in terms of premises and assumptions. Premises or assumptions. Probe beneath the surface of key claims and reasons that writers, you'll discover core principles, usually only implied, but sometimes state directly. When you are doing with the premises and assumptions, you're trying to think about and answer the question that's not been asked. You're trying to find out, where they stand on certain things. When people say, I get where you're coming from, they signal that they understand your assumption. So you have an assumption, but again, I feel like that's a kind of a two-edged thing. Whereas the reader, you want them to get your assumption of where you're going, which means you need to fill that out. A lot of that, again, is under claims and evidence. A claim without evidence attached is just that, a barefaced assertion, no better than a child's. Oh yeah. You got to have the yin and the yang on that. Anticipate objections. And I was just getting ready to, now we're not going to go deep into this. In my 4th edition, actually it's in this one too. We're only going to touch the surface. The other half of this is logical fallacies, and I'm unpacking that next week because we're going to park on this a little bit because we're going to be leading into a rhetorical analysis. I mean, if you wanted to read through it, that's fine, but it's not necessary for this week because we are hitting that hard next week. Main thing to get out of chapter 26 is his claims and assumptions, trying to assume what questions may arise in order for you to answer them. For the reader, because again, that strengthens your argument. You really don't want your reader leaving with a bunch of like, well, where were they going with that? Well, what about this? What about that? So when you're doing those pre-writing exercises of brainstorming and writing questions down, not only questions that you have, but what questions would somebody else have? As a side note, and I know I've said this before, there's an MLA packet that is in your module or in your resource module. Not only am I teaching you how to set up a document in MLA, I am also how you are doing research and how you go about that. My cat is doing stuff. I'm sorry about that. He's trying to get my attention. Sorry. All right. 28. Strategies of development. 28. They do not have that one in edition 5. But that's more or less the same. Outlining. Chapter 29. We've talked about that in class. Definitely read through it. Also, like I said, read that packet. I actually go through how to set up an outline. Hopefully you were in class where I have written that outline out on the board. We walked through it. For your critique this week, I have information in your module about how to create the outline and how to attack that critique. Please never write a paper or project with an outline. Your map will save hours off of just staring at a computer screen. Your outline tells you where you're going. All you have to do is follow your map. Again, I think I've already said it once, but I'm going to say it a zillion times more. Do not write in complete sentences or paragraph form in that outline. What people tend to do is they copy and paste it, put it in their paper. A couple things are going to happen. The first one is it's going to be disconnected. It's not going to be developed. It's not really going to be substance. You remember, every idea must flow easily into the next idea. The other piece of that is a lot of people will copy and paste, and then they will not make page count, which is a problem. So definitely read through outlining. It goes through the process of outlining. Let's see, chapter 32. Overcoming writer's block. You definitely want to read through that. There's a lot of different things that we do, but one of the things that I've always found, one, brainstorm. Two, take a break. Go think about what you're writing, what's your angle on that. But brainstorming really is very, very important. Chapter 33, which is chapter 31. Oh, okay, there's my levels of style. Now this is where in week 1 we did low, medium, and high. Look at those notes. This actually breaks it down into more specifics as far as where you would use each one of those. You want to know those. 32. Yeah, the reason I'm not going into it deep is because I've already done that in class. But you can read that. And like I said, the chapter actually goes into more detail. So you really want to do that. Chapter 34, clear and vigorous writing. 34 in edition 4 is chapter 32 in edition 5, clear and vigorous writing. It actually goes through examples of confusion and the better sentence. That really falls under that concise. What to avoid, things to help. This is definitely a great reference. Avoid doubling, redundancy. Okay, now in here, I want to go through my 3 editing tools that I will use for everything. The first one is, once you've been writing for a while, you really get used to it. Your brain starts to fill in the blank. We auto correct in our brain, doesn't necessarily translate to the paper. So the first thing is you get up, you go get a cup of coffee. Go outside, get some fresh air. Get away from whatever you've written. Take a little break, 15, 20 minutes. Then, longer, it's going to be hard to go back. So about 15, 20 minutes, just get up, get some fresh air. Come back, look at it with fresh eyes. That will help you to identify some phrasing, misspelled words, things like that. My second one is read it out loud exactly the way that you have written it. If you don't have a period, you don't stop. If you have a period, you stop. Same thing with commas. Then you'll find out, especially if you have like periods, a lot short and choppy sentences, and you're like this, that means you need to rephrase. We speak in phrases. We don't speak like robots. We're not speaking in short, choppy sentences. I was saying, give me an easy read. Think about what it is that would engage you. And I can tell you, it's not short, choppy sentences. Phrasing is important. Use your punctuation. Again, the rule of thumb on punctuation is that you want, you're writing it in a manner that the reader will be able to read your phrases in the manner that it was intended. If you're unsure of something, look it up. Okay. And you've got Word, autocorrect, Grammarly. There are a lot of things that are out there. I will tell you that Grammarly sometimes will try to ding me on something, and that's not what I intended. I know exactly how I want to phrase something. And you do have the right, as the author, this is your baby, you're creating it, to either agree or disagree with it. Okay. The last one. So the first one is get up, walk away, come back with some fresh eyes. Second one, read your writing, print it out, get your marking pen, read your writing out loud exactly the way that you've written it. Circle areas, put in parentheses if something is awkward. I'm going to tell you, the reading it out loud will pick up about 80%, if not more, of your errors. Don't stop and fix at that time. read it through with your pen, you're circling, or if it's an awkward phrasing, I'll actually put what was confusing in parentheses. So I know I need to go back and I need to revise it. So mark it up while you're doing it, but do not read it like you want it in your head. You have to read it how you wrote it to see if it's translating the way that you want it to be read. Your last one is have someone else read it. A parent, a trusted friend, somebody that knows how to write, that do what they do well. The writing lab is a great resource for that. A couple cautions here. First one is if you have your parent read your writing, which is fine, it's fine. Remember that you asked them to read it, so don't argue with them when they point something out that needs to be fixed. Please respect. The other piece of that is, because there's a yin and yang, there are some parents that are overzealous. I want you to be successful, and they will tell you how to fix it. And in a kind and respectful manner, you're going to say, I really appreciate that. But could you just identify the areas that I need to fix and let me fix it? The thing is if you allow them to rewrite it for you, then you're not practicing how to fix your own writing. It's a learned skill. Okay. So they're just identifying it. Same thing with friends. Okay. Anyone that you have that's reading, reading your work, and be very specific. Could you just read through this, identify areas that need to be fixed? If I have a misspelled word, could you circle it? You have got to be the one who edits your paper. The best editors, the best self-editors are the best writers, because you're able to go back in and critically look at what you've written in order to make it better. So those are your three. You do need to know those, by the way. It does mention that in chapter 34 or 32, depending upon which edition you are in. It says here, cut the first draft by 25% or more. I'm not sure about that. If you write a really good outline, I mean, you may go over. Now, when you use your outline and you're transferring your outline into a rough draft, you type that paper out exactly the way you have it mapped out. Do not cut anything. Do not say, oh, well, it's getting too long, I'll do this. Do not do that. You wait to do any final editing, moving, cutting, condensing after the whole rough draft, so you know what you have to work with. Okay, follow your map. Once your map is written into that rough draft form, then you go back and you wordsmith and you start editing and revising. Okay. 35, inclusive writing, is basically showing respect to your audience. Kind of going back to what I was saying earlier. Don't purposely put in things that are going to offend someone. If you are writing to a group that is pro-life, you're not going to shove pro-abortion things, like in their face. You're going to word it so they can see your perspective and, make it work for the audience, but never purposely go back and hurt someone. Again, once you do that, that's really under the guise of insulting. And once you've insulted, you lost, you failed. So you want people to hear what you have to say. So that's going to take you through the first 2 weeks. It's a lot of information, but I think that hopefully that you've seen that we've discussed all this in class. A lot of this is just reiterating it. It gives you a place to look. That's why I brought out your textbooks. And then we will have a quiz this week. So if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, see you in class.